Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Laline Lamar, and I am United Way's Grant Making Director. Teresa, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good afternoon. I'm sorry, I don't have my picture up, but good afternoon, everyone. I'm Teresa McAdams. I am going to be the person in the background moving the slides along for Rob. I'm also with the grants team.
Great, and I think we have people in the waiting room, so people are going to continue to come in. I'll hit admit now, but let's keep an eye on that.
Yeah, I got it. I can do it, Rob.
Okay, great. All right, so today we're going to go through, talk about this funding opportunity, cover important things like what the eligibility is, what we're looking for, where all the resources are for this, and as we're doing that, please kind of make note of questions that you may have. You can enter them into the chat as we go, and we'll stop periodically to address those questions. And just know at the end, we'll also have some time for questions and answers. Again, mostly we'll ask you to put those in the chat, and we will try to cover them all, and we should have enough time to do that. There may be some questions we are not prepared to answer. If you guys stump us, which happens, there's usually one or two questions that we say, well, we need to kind of rethink about that. We want to make sure we're really clear with that information. And so in that case, we may say that we're not going to answer at this time, but we will include the answers to all questions posed and post those questions and answers on our website with our other grant materials. So just so you all know, that will be a resource that we encourage you to take advantage of and look at following this. And also, just because one of the early questions we always get is, will this information be available? And so we are recording this session, and we will post that recording on our website as well. And we will also post the slide deck. So you'll be able to look back. You don't need to take notes or screenshots or things like that. You'll be able to access those on our website. And I'm going to ask Laline and Teresa to jump in anytime I say something that they think is that I'm off on, which is possible. Like I looked at Laline, and she nodded when I said we were going to post these, just to confirm, because I knew that we could, but I might, you never know. So I'll ask her to keep me in check and to provide any other information that is important to you all that I may be missing. All right, so let's start off with the next slide. Just a little bit about United Way. We are United Way of Central Maryland, and we are coming up on our 100th anniversary in 2025. So we're very excited about that and making plans about that. But we have been, over the course of these 97 years, have really been working to support folks in need around Central Maryland and support neighborhood development. And you can see it's Baltimore City and the 5 surrounding counties make up Central Maryland, and that's our footprint. The next slide. And we have many different areas of impact. We focus on these kind of four pillars of health, housing, education, and economic advancement. So even within work, like it's jurisdiction-wide or neighborhoods, those are kind of the four, and they pretty much encompass a lot of the needs. And of course, we have the 211 helpline, which is staffed by and overseen by United Way of Central Maryland. And so for those of you who don't know, it's a great resource for folks who you're working with who need additional resources. You can call the helpline, and we have professionals who answer those calls, who have a database of over 5,000 services available to refer people to, do a really good job of talking with folks to better understand what their needs are, what resources they're looking for. So we continue to make sure people know about that resource. You probably heard a lot about it more about it during the pandemic. The governor was saying, please call 211 if to find out where additional services are. And certainly we saw our car volume spike during that time as there was such great need, but just continues to be a good resource. Okay, next slide, please.
Hey, Rob, we got a question. Yeah. Is 211 being absorbed into 988?
It is not, and I can look at that later, but there's, as far as I know, there's no plan to absorb it into 988 locally. I think there's some conversations in other places about how to partner, but I'm actually not as familiar with those conversations, so maybe I shouldn't have jumped out and said it's not, but we can look at that. We'll provide an answer to that as part of our Q&A also, just to, because that's a good question. All right. So just a quick overview. We are interested, part of our strategic plan that we put together as an organization 6 years ago, leading up to our 100th anniversary. We really wanted to lean in more to support smaller nonprofits, to provide resources that amplify the power of local leaders and community members that really get to away from kind of this top-down approach, but really, recognize that the local community members and local leaders know their community's assets to build on. They know what their needs are, where there's opportunities for connecting each other, and that they've got great plans and sometimes need resources and support to be able to implement those plans. And so we want to be able to provide some more support. And this neighborhood grants is one way in which we're doing that.
Rob, can you speak up? We've heard that you're coming across, the volume is low.
Oh,
sorry about that.
That's okay. Maybe if I hold is it better if I hold my my speaker? Is this any better now?
That's better. And also, okay. Can everyone see the slides? Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry about the interruption.
Sorry, thank you. Okay, next slide, please. So these neighborhood grants are, they range from 2,500 to 10,000. They're for a 9-month period. We did have a 6-month period, and we found that it was difficult for sometimes it took a little bit longer. So we just went ahead and extended it to 9 months. And we're anticipating making 40 to 50 awards in that range again this year. Last year, we ended up with 49 grantees. Just as an example, the first year, I think we were closer to 40. So it could exceed that, but I think that's the range that we're looking at based on the amount of resources we have. Next slide. And so now we're going to dive into the heart of what we're really looking for. And so, whenever you hear words like, this is an overview, but this is the selection criteria. So this is really what we're talking about in terms of how your applications will be reviewed, or what we want to see embedded in what you're submitting to us. And that we're looking for projects that are community centered, right? So they're really based on, and I think, we are looking, it can't be beyond just like a geographic community. I think originally in the first year, we were really thinking about neighborhoods specifically. We got some proposals that were around communities as defined by groups of people with common interests or common support systems or things like that. So there is some room for that, to define a community that way. We want to be driven by the people who are being served, whether it's the neighbors or the members of the community, that it inspires connection among the community members, and that demonstrates a strong promise of providing, of having positive impact for that community or those members. Next slide. And we have 3 categories that you would be applying under, and there's definitely overlap. Sometimes you may have something that covers vibrant spaces and socially connected neighbor residents, or building active local leaders while also connecting residents, for example. So we're just asking you to select one, but that you're really looking at kind of these 3 general categories as part of your application. Next slide. And we've also have, as an organization, as we lean into supporting smaller organizations and with all of our grant making, we have are prioritizing providing funding to applicants that are led by Black, Indigenous, or people of color. And just as an example, last year, 60% of our grants that we gave out were to BIPOC-led organizations through the neighborhood grant process. Next slide. And so here's a quick question that popped up from Andy Masters. I'll just address that right now since it jumped in front of me. We were talking about like the president and CEO is how we're doing that. I know there's deeper conversations about boards and things like that, but for right now, we're for the sake of this, we're whoever the lead staff person of that organization, be it the executive director or CEO, president, whatever their title, we want the applicants to identify whether that person is a person of color, and it's part of our priority in our selection process. Okay, so to be eligible, here we're going to go through kind of 2 pages of eligibility, although it's not as complicated as it seems. You need to be a nonprofit with nonprofit status. You need to be in good standing with the state of Maryland. We ask you to either submit a certificate, upload a certificate, or take a screenshot that includes the date and upload that. So we try to make that kind of low cost and something you can do pretty quickly. You have to, as an organization, practice non-discrimination. The big one is around annual budgets. We're really, again, as part of the strategic plan, wanting to fund smaller nonprofits. Through some opportunities for this, these are your annual, we're funding organizations who have an annual operating budget in their current fiscal year under $500,000. And we have some accountability requirements in terms of financial documents, which we'll get into. You can use a fiscal agent. So if you are not a nonprofit or don't have nonprofit status, but you're a community-based organization, you can apply with a fiscal agent. In those cases, we're looking for the fiscal agent's kind of nonprofit status, and their budget can be over $500,000, obviously, but we want to make sure that they're in good standing that they are the organization that's submitting the financial documents. Yes, the fiscal agent can have a budget of over $500,000, but we want the organization, the community-based organization that is using the fiscal agent to identify their operating budget and it's under $500,000. And then, obviously we're serving Central Maryland. So a project that is, we want you to identify which jurisdiction your project will be serving. You can only apply for one application, submit one application per organization. That's overall. So that means, if you're submitting an application in Baltimore County, that's your one application. It's not one per jurisdiction. Again, the idea behind this is, community-based efforts, neighborhood-based efforts. So we weren't looking for an organization that is providing kind of broader services across multiple jurisdictions. And if you have received a neighborhood grant in our first 2 years, you're now eligible in the 3rd year. So we did have, I think, 2 organizations that received this grant both in 2020 and in 2021 and for 2022, and they're not eligible, and that will carry forward. So if you received one last year, you're eligible to apply this year. Just know if you receive it again this year, then you would have to skip a year. And if you are a current partner that receives funding from us for other projects, if you've received COVID funding or anything else recently, none of that disqualifies you. You are eligible to apply. Okay, next slide. And so this one is a little bit complicated, but we do require that you provide a financial document of some sort as part of our kind of fiscal accountability to make sure that the organizations we are funding are, doing a good job of kind of record keeping and those things. We have changed, for the sake of this grant, we have changed the requirement for organizations that are small. So $300,000 or less as an annual for your kind of gross income from whichever year, within the last 2 years you're providing this document. You don't need to have something that's submitted by an auditor. You can submit internal financial documents like a Form 990, profit loss statements, your organization budget, something like that. That just gives us a sense of how much money you had and that how it's being spent. If you are but an organization between over 300,000 and above, up to 500,000, or if you're using a fiscal agent, beyond that, you see the categories here. We need a financial review if it's between 300,000 and 750,000. And that financial review needs to be, and it's like an official document, an official review performed by an independent auditor. And if you're a larger organization, which means you're not eligible to apply for this grant, but in the case of a fiscal agent, we would like the fiscal agent would need to provide a full audit if their annual budget is over 750,000. And these are aligned with the state requirements and kind of best practices in nonprofit. We used to have this financial review category extend to everybody who was under 750. And we made this kind of extra category for the sake of these neighborhood grants in particular, because we found it was very hard for the smaller nonprofits to invest in a financial review. So it's kind of a small step towards trying to make sure these grants are a little bit more equitable, and we hopefully we can provide some guidance on financial stuff as needed. All right, next slide. So just what we're not looking for, right? These are project-based grants. So, you can include some administrative funds, but we're not looking for just kind of straight up general operating requests. You should be describing something that you're going to do specifically with this funding that is aligned with the projects, the categories that we outlined. Like I said, we want this to be focused on a kind of a neighborhood or a community, not kind of jurisdiction wide or regional. We're, trying to get away from the kind of, top-down organizations come in and kind of are proposing to provide services to a community. We want to make sure this is really embedded in the community. Now, certainly folks can have partners. It can be included in, if you already have a really good relationship with the community and you're building upon that, you just need to make it clear that that's part of what's going on, and that you're working closely with the residents and or community that you're serving. Projects that don't align with the categories, obviously the grant, and then some ineligible activities, or religious activities. We can fund, we can fund nonprofits that are religious organizations as long as they're not using these funds for religious activities, and specifically no lobbying activities and no individuals applying on their own behalf. So if you have any questions for that, just make sure you put them in the chat, and we will kind of loop back to those. All right, next slide.
Hey, Rob, can we ask a quick question that was asked a little bit ago? Real quick. Just one moment, let me find it. So Brooke wanted to know, she said, we are a new organization awaiting our letter of determination, but have been told it could be up to 8 months. We have everything else. Would we qualify? And I thought you would be best to answer this question.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Brooke. Like pending 501c3s, we cannot accept those in this case. But I don't know if you have the opportunity to use a fiscal agent temporarily, and while you're waiting, it's a common practice. I know there's, so consider that, or see if there's another partner that can be the lead in your application. If it's, if they qualify. If another partner could serve as the fiscal kind of the fiscal agent for you, even if they're a large organization, but it's your proposal and the money's going to you, that's also something that we could consider. Oh, so there you go. You've got the community foundation. So yeah, that would be if they could serve as the fiscal agent for this project while you're waiting to get your own 501c3, that would be great. All right.
Rob, we have a question from Aurelia.
Yes, thank you. So my church is who wants to apply for the grant. Our 501c3 is actually held by our denomination in California, but we're under their umbrella, is it still possible to apply?
So I would say, I think we should probably answer that in writing. I understand, right, once you have a denomination that like their budget's going to be way over, but if your local budget of your organization is, again, if you're like your chapter, let's say, has a budget that falls within line, and there's kind of serving as your your fiscal umbrella, I think that you could treat them as a fiscal agent as long as your local chapter is kind of independent in some way. And if that makes sense to you, and we can be more clear.
It does.
Okay.
It does. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So let's go through. So video submission. So this is an interesting one that we've talked about and has been an opportunity. So we really feel like we're trying to make an application process that helps our reviewers, and our reviewers are community members who are part of our, we have a regional United Network boards that are kind of community representatives and members in each of the jurisdictions who will review the applications for each jurisdiction. And one of the things that we want to make sure is that this application process is not just about who's got the best grant writer, right? We want to make sure that there is a way that we're really able to take a look and understand what's happening in the community that is community focused, all those things. And really have found that the use of a short video can be really helpful in helping people understand. It gives you another opportunity besides just the written word in an application process to help our reviewers and staff kind of connect to your project, understand what's happening. We're not requiring this, but strongly encouraging you to do that because it could really be a missed opportunity. They will be reviewed, and the review of those will be part of the conversation. This part, so it would just be kind of a missed opportunity. That said, again, you're not required, and what we're not asking people to do is invest any money or have a professional video either. Handheld cell phone videos are certainly welcome. The content is more important than the quality, and we are going to provide some guidance just on how to make a short video, what we're looking for kind of to support an application. And we will also include some time in our grant writing session, which is scheduled for next week, which I'll talk about in a little bit, for folks to talk through kind of, the best way or just some tips on how to make this video so that it does accomplish what we're hoping it does, and that kind of just provides some more depth and insight into the work you're doing in your communities. Okay, next slide. So here are the dates. Today is our information session. As I mentioned, we have this grant writing workshop, which is next week, next Monday. Again, not mandatory, but I think it's always a good idea. There'll be some broad kind of grant writing tips in there, but there'll also be certainly a focus on, this application in particular. So the next thing on there, as I mentioned, there's a question and answer. The questions from today and questions that you would be able to also follow up. Sometimes you leave a meeting and you think about a question down the road, or you will look back at the RFP and you still have a question. So there will be open invitation for questions up through November 9th, which is Wednesday at 5 p.m. And that's kind of the last time we'll accept questions about the content. And the reason we do that is not arbitrary. We just want to make sure everybody has equal access to all the information. So we make sure that all the questions that we answer, we're providing those answers to everybody in a timely manner, and everybody has access to them. So we will post that on Monday the 14th, so you still have kind of 2 weeks with access to those questions and answers. The submission deadline is Tuesday, November 29th at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. So that's important to know because at 5 o'clock, the system will lock you out, and so you won't be able to please make sure you press submit by that time. And we will, with the holidays all in the mix there, we wanted to make sure we had due time to really consider those applications. That's why we're not going with the January 1 start date. We didn't want to rush the process. And so we're going to take a little bit of extra time to make sure we're being thorough and fair and all those things, and make decisions by mid-January. And your grant period, as I mentioned before, will start on February 1st. And what's not included here, and I saw a question pop up, so I'll just address that now. It's not a reimbursement grant. We will, and since it's only up to $10,000, we're going to just provide the full amount of the grant to you, after the agreement signed. So, you should get, assuming there's no delays in kind of getting the agreement signed and back, you'll get the grant payment in February. Okay, next slide. So, as I've mentioned before, there's questions. If you have questions today, we're going to answer them kind of as we go, and by monitoring the chat and try to get through as many or all of them if we can. You still have the opportunity to submit questions. These directions are outlined in the RFP, but as a reminder, you email them to grantquestions@uwcm.org with the subject line RFP question. And we're going to post those on the 14th. What's not highlighted here is that there's, if we will accept kind of technical support questions if you're having trouble logging into Community Force, or, the day before the proposals due, something's not working. You can also submit questions with a different subject line, which is, I'm not sure what it is. What is RFP technical question or something? I have it here, but anyway, there's a different, it's outlined, and we'll circle back on that. But so we will be available to support that. Again, I encourage you not to wait until the last minute, though. Things happen, and so just try to not wait till the last minute and then have an issue, because that could be problematic and hard on Laleen for sure, who will be managing any technical issues that come up. Okay, I think that our next step, Laleen, you want to pause and address some questions before we kind of move to the walkthrough? So we're going to answer a few questions now, and then Laleen's going to actually walk you through the application, what it looks like, the questions, those things within our grant portal, so you can see how that works.
Yeah, Rob, we've basically caught up on all the chat questions, but I see that Adi has a question. She has her hand raised.
Great.
And then next we'll take Teresa Divers.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Adi? Yeah.
I just had a question about, you said you're looking for resident-driven projects, and I'm wondering if you can kind of tell us a bit more about what that means. It's a pretty broad term. Does that mean that the residents are creating the program, or the programs are, derived from feedback from residents, or that residents are participating in the program? A little clarity there would help a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And when you see the questions that we're asking in the RFP, you'll see a little bit of what we're kind of trying to get at. It is it can take any of those forms, right? I guess what we don't want to see is, kind of top down, we know what's best for your community, or even, one or two people. We want to, so it can be just informed, like evidence that you are responding to. You've taken some measure to collect information from, understand the needs of the residents or your community members. The degree to which they're kind of engaged in planning is also, great. If that's part of your process, that would be a positive. And then also involved in the implementation. So kind of all along the way, how are you engaging residents, both to inform the work you're doing and design the work that you're doing, and then kind of to implement and get ownership and connect with residents. So kind of all of the above, if that makes sense. And Teresa?
Yes, thank you. And forgive me if I missed it. I just wanted to be clear. In regards to the nonprofit qualification, does 501c7 count, or is it only 501c3?
No, we didn't specify 501c3, so it's just any nonprofit status we're okay with.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. Lillian, any other hands or questions in the chat before we move on?
I think that we are all set, Rob. Thank you.
Great. All right. So next slide, Teresa. All right. Well, this is a good point for this. So now it's a good time to share my screen, because right after this, I think, is the walkthrough. So I'm gonna by way of I'm gonna be sharing my screen, and as Lillian walks you through the application process. But as part of that, I'm gonna start off just by making sure you all have gone to our website and see where the resources are and where they will be. And then that's how I'll get into Community Force as part of that. Can you all see my screen, which is the United Way's webpage?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great.
Yes, we can see it.
So when you come to our webpage here, under what do we do, you see nonprofit funding. So across the top, there's these tabs, need help, what do we do? When you hover on that, you get this menu that drops down. If you go to nonprofit funding, you will see this page that provides a list of funding opportunities that we have. And right now, we currently have, there's several over the course of the year, but right now you'll see we have the 2013 neighborhood grant. And you can see a little bit of introduction. Here's the click to go to the portal. You'll see application materials right now. The RFP document is there. Again, after this, we will add under this RFP document, we will add as I said, the things that we mentioned, the PowerPoint, the recording. When we have a Q&A, we will put that there as well. Tips on your video. Those are things to look for as we move on. We'll continue to add things to that. So check back. And then under application support, you guys registered. You saw this obviously for the registration for the neighborhood grant information session. Just a reminder that if you're interested to register here on the screen, you'll see where my cursor is for the grant writing session, which is next Monday. The application questions, as we mentioned, are it's the same website. RFP questions as the subject line, as we mentioned, up until Wednesday the 9th. And then for technical support, which is up until you submit, it's RFP technical assistance. Anyways, you can find all that here. And also, just so you know, if you want to look back at last year's grantees, you can see some of the folks that were funded and a brief description, just to give you a sense of some of the things that we last year's neighborhood grant recipients. All right. I've talked plenty, so I'm going to turn it over to Lillian. I'm going to click application portal, which takes us straight to our Community Force login. And I'm going to ask Lillian to take it away.
Thank you, Rob. So here you see the login screen. Before, Rob, you log in, I just want to point out that if for whatever reason you have logged in, you've set up a password and you've forgotten your password for whatever reason, I would prefer for you to contact me directly instead of selecting the forget password option. The reason why is I could pretty much get it done fairly quickly. If you go to the forget password, it might end up in the response might end up in your junk mail or some other place, or be blocked for whatever reason. So again, contact me directly to reset your password. Rob, can you log in now? So this is the screen that you'll see after you log in. Rob has some other grants that are listed here from previous grant opportunities. But for those who are new to Community Force, this will largely be blank, except for the two sections at the top, the search and my applications. If you could select search, Rob, we're going to go and look for and view all grants. So now you're on a screen that will tell you the grant opportunities that we have currently going on. Some of them are older and are no longer available, but however, you will see the apply button on the 2023 neighborhood grant. There is before you hit apply, Rob, there is a little box over there, it's kind of really faint. It says view more. If you wanted to view more information, you can click on that for more information about what the grant is about. But most of this has been covered in full detail by Rob earlier. So I would recommend for those who have attended this session, you can go directly to apply for grant and or look at the RFP.
Okay,
So
ready?
Yep, ready. Thank you.
Yep.
So this is a pre-qualification section. This is just to make sure that you are eligible for this grant. We don't want to waste your time. We don't want to waste our grant reviewers' time. We just want to make sure everything is pretty clear as to what we're looking for. I want to point out question number, where is it? Number 5. So for question number 5, it reads, does the applicant practice non-discrimination with regards to race, color, religion, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity expression, age, ancestry, marital status, or disability? This question is just making sure that your organization does not practice discrimination. And so it's a kind of a trick question, the way it's worded, but does the applicant practice non-discrimination for everyone? I would assume that answer would be yes, you practice non-discrimination. So Rob, can you fill in this area, and then we're going to hit submit once you've answered all of your questions. So Rob has successfully been qualified to apply for this grant, as all of you will be, I'm sure. This is what we call the dashboard. If you scroll down a little bit, Rob, you will see 3 sections that are the sections of the application. All 3 of these sections are required, and you will see right under those little icons a percentage and a taskbar that will grow as you've completed all of the required sections. You need all of these required sections to be at 100% before you can submit your application. If you, yes.
Can I interrupt for just a minute? This is Teresa.
Sure. Yes.
Michelle Brown has a message in the chat. It says, can you repeat question 5 and the answer again?
Okay, let's see. I don't think we can go back, but essentially the question is making sure that your organization does not practice discrimination. So the question is asking, does your organization practice non-discrimination? And then the question would be, yes, you practice non-discrimination. Does that make sense?
Yes, she said thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so again, I think I left off with all of these sections have to be at 100% before you can hit submit. Please be sure that they are completely to your liking before you hit submit, because once you do, it is it's a process to unsubmit an application, and it could take some time. So I just want to make sure you're very comfortable before you hit submit in your application. So I am going to cover general information, which is that first section. Rob is going to go over project description and narrative, and then Rob and I are going to talk about the project budget. So I'm doing a little bit of a time check here. We're at about 1:45, so we're doing pretty good. Are there any other questions before we go right into the general information section?
Yes, I do have a question.
Okay, thank you. Is this Joseph?
It is?
Yes.
Relative to the non-discrimination question, how does that relate to a project that is going to be focused on Black teenagers, Black male teenagers? Although the organization, our nonprofit, doesn't practice discrimination, our project that we wanted to submit was going to specifically address young or teenage Black males. Is that an issue?
No, that is not an issue. Serving a population that's historically underserved would not be considered discrimination.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So Rob, can you select general information, please? So here I want to point out a few things, and I want to make sure that you're fully comfortable with the orientation of this application. The very first thing that I want to mention is that you should probably save your work as you go along. That's pretty important, especially in a system that is going to be used a lot, and we want to avoid you losing anything should it, for whatever reason, stop working for whatever reason. So just be sure to save your work as you go along. Not many of us like write out all of our questions in a Word doc and cut and paste it over. So I want to make sure that everything that you have intended to share with us is in the document. So the name of the organization, I want to point out that it refers to the group that will be implementing the project. So for those using a fiscal agent, the fiscal agent would not be the name of the organization. That's a separate section. The name of the organization is the organization that's doing the project. Rob, if you can scroll down, I just want to show Helen where the save buttons are. At the very bottom of each of the sections of the application, you have the opportunity to save and return to dashboard, or return to dashboard. So Rob, if you can go back up again, I just want to go to the EIN. I want to point out a text field that has limitations, character limitations. I think it's below this section. Yep, there it is. There it is. Thank you. So the EIN is obviously 9 digits. This section will only allow you to put in 9 digits. So please don't put any hyphens or any characters. Just put the number straight in so that it'll take. And then Rob, if you could please scroll down to the jurisdiction, and you'll see the sections are highlighted in blue. So here the jurisdiction is asking, which jurisdictions does your organization serve? And here we would want to know all of the jurisdictions that you are serving in Central Maryland. This is different than what you're going to see in the next section, which is the project description and narrative. That section is going to be asking you which jurisdiction is your project in, and that can only be one jurisdiction. Rob, if you could please go down to, yes, thank you for sharing that. He's gonna populate some fields for us. Excellent. So for the executive director, which is a little just, yep, there we are. I know that some folks have a different type of leadership structure. You may not have a named executive director or a CEO. If you do not have a person that is specifically in that role, you could share a person or more that that's on your leadership team, and share the title in the title section, which is just below it, with the title that is applicable for that person. And then finally, if we can scroll down a little bit more, we're going to go to the fiscal agent section. This is for those who have identified an agent sponsor. All of this information is pretty important that we get from you all if you are using this type of sponsorship. And those reddish tinted text boxes are required fields. Anything that has a red asterisk in the front of the question or a red text box is a required field. If you do not have a fiscal agent sponsor, you would select no, and then you would not be required to complete those sections. Okay, see, now it's gone, so you don't have to worry about it. So for the required organization documents, these are documents that have to be uploaded, and Rob spent a bit of time talking about what we're looking for. I just want to point out that for the financial audit document, it really should be within the last 2 fiscal years. If you are looking for a good standing certificate with Maryland assessments and taxations, that would be within your current fiscal year. And these uploaded files have to be 10 megabytes each. And if you're using a fiscal agent, the fiscal agent's documentation would go here. So I'll repeat that again. If you're using a fiscal agent, the documents that we're looking for, the tax exempt letter, the financial document, and the certificate of good standing should be from your fiscal agent sponsor. And then we would just have you incorporate your name in the text field that certifies the information is accurate. Rob, is there anything that you wanted to add at this point?
I guess if in the case of the woman earlier who mentioned her congregation is based in California, I would say, right, they won't have a Maryland certificate of good standing, but if they have a local chapter certificate, use that instead, or whatever California kind of equivalent. So I know that can trip people up sometime, but just do your best to.
Yes, we have a Maryland good standing.
Right. So in that case, it would be yours instead of your fiscal agents, but that's fine. That's good to know. Thank you. And then just the process for selecting these, if you click browse, it will take you to your files and you can pick something. These are just random things. My tax return, for example, that just happen to be here, which I won't, but you just click on anything click on whatever file it is, and then it'll upload, and then you will recognize it in there. If you did the wrong thing, you can delete it. So, and start again.
Hey, Robert, are you going to accept screenshots with the time and date stamp in the corner and not an official certificate?
Yeah, for good standing, yes. We're not going to require you to purchase it. You can look it up and just make sure you have this date as we said, so we know it's current, and we will accept those screenshots. So you can just take a screenshot of that and then upload that document here for the certificate of good standing. Absolutely.
Question?
Yes, Joseph.
Yeah, there was just a comment that each of the files that is to be uploaded should be 10 megabytes each. Is that going to be an option that you choose when you upload the file, and we're required to choose the 10 megabyte option?
Rob, you're on mute. Rob, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I tried to unmute me and I muted Joseph. I didn't mean to do that, Joseph. Sorry about that. It's just 10 megabytes max. So it's whatever document. It's just if it's too big, it won't fit or it won't accept the upload. So it can be anything up to 10 megabytes. And so if you find that your document is larger than that, you would need to have it compressed or choose for, or figure out a way to make it a shorter document that's uploadable. If it really comes down to it and you can't figure it out, contact Laline, and you could probably email it to us, but it's easiest if it's, or something like that. I shouldn't speak for her, but we don't want this to be a hurdle, but that makes it a lot easier if you're able to upload something and it's under 10 megabytes.
Right, got it. Thank you.
So this is a good opportunity, Rob, to show how to, like what I was saying, how to save often. So can you show them how you would save and then return to the dashboard to make sure that the document is uploaded? Well, Rob, can you scroll up to the top, please? Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, so now Rob is going to take us through the project description and narrative section. Are you ready, Rob?
Yes, I'm ready. And I just wanted to point out, so you saw I added some answers in there. And so this number went up to 47% based on, I didn't answer everything, but I did put in a few answers. We eliminated the fiscal agent piece. I outputted one thing. So as Laleen pointed out, it's a running total. And so this keeps you, until this is 100%, you have to go back, as Laleen said, go back and find what hasn't been completed. All right, so here is the application narrative, right? This is the main, obviously, the meat of what you're going to be evaluated on, your responses to these questions. We're asking for a title and the address. The address here is not, where your office is necessarily or where the headquarters are, or it's we're looking for the description of the community that you're serving. So, so just the name of the community, maybe the boundaries, if it's like a specific neighborhood, or if it's broader than that, if it's a community that's not a geographic community, just then maybe you could use the headquarters and just be, express that this is, just to kind of describe the location as best you can. As Laleen pointed out, we're accepting one application serving one jurisdiction, so you'd have to choose one of these jurisdictions. We're asking for the neighborhood, it's like which neighborhood will be impacted. So just a quick description. Look, I did that in Pigtown popped up. So I think I was playing around with an application. It remembered that I put Pigtown in because that's where our office is. It's right there in that area of the city. And then primary focus is, these three things that we outlined: build vibrant neighborhood spaces, build socially connected, active neighborhood residents, and build empowered local leaders. And then here are the narratives. We're looking for this 100-word summary of your request. And that's a really helpful to just, to go back after you've looked at it. We sometimes use that to then describe, who the grantees are that got awards. We draw from that information. It's a good summary to help people understand before they dive into these questions. And then we have basically 5 narrative questions, I think. 1, tell us about your organization and the connection to the community. So, there's 300 words max. So you can, I do suggest, as somebody who writes proposals, part of my role, or our grant team's role at United Way, we're also grant writers, and we seek money to do this in a Word document. It's easier than doing it here. And then you can edit it. You can use the word count function as part of that if you want, and then cut and paste it and put it in here. But as you add words in here, you will see that's one word. I put the, and down here in the lower right corner, it says one word. And then when you get over a certain amount, do I have something up? Let's see if I've got something. Let me just grab a document I happen to have open. I will cut and paste all of this, and I will put it in here. It's telling me to use Control V, by the way, which I forget to do. Sometimes they require that instead of just and I'm going to do it again. And so you see, I'm over the 300 words, and it's giving me this notice. Make sure your word count is between 101 and 300 words. I click OK. And so those words are all in there right now, but I'm not eligible to submit this correctly this way. So you just need to make sure that you're under that amount, or else it will reject you won't be able to save it like this or submit it like this. So just keep an eye on this word count and the 300 words. So just, the things that we talked about, here's where you really apply and we'll talk more at length more in the the grant writers workshop next week. But here's where you're going to apply those criteria that I was talking about, that it's, we want to know that the organization that's submitting this application really knows the community it's serving well. So certainly, you can look up and, the stats, the data on a community from, census data, those kind of things. That's fine. Any grant writer can do that. Somebody who's not at all connected to the community can do that. So that can be part of the picture. But we also want to hear that, things that really let us know that the community, the residents well, not just what the data looks like, but what are some of the particular challenges that they're facing that maybe leads to some of that data, or what are the strengths, what are the great things going on that you want to build on as part of this. So that's really three. Actually, I jumped a little bit. That's to tell us about the community, tell us about your organization and how you're connected. Is what's your history there? How embedded are you? Who partners are you? Are you the community organization from there, or are you partnering? So how has your organization supported that community? If it's, information about your staff members and board members and how they're either of the community or reflect the community, have experiences, lived experiences, all that is helpful, in making the case that you are, the community well, and can serve them well. And then tell us about the community. That's where I kind of jumped up a little bit and was talking about what makes it unique? Why do you love the community that you're in, and for all of its strengths and faults, and what are some of those challenges, and what are neighbors, how did you come upon that information? And then, outline your project. Again, what are you planning to do in these categories, which category, what are you planning to do? What's the primary goal? What are you trying to achieve? And how does your project do? Again, and we've kind of, again, reiterated these four selection criteria. How is this project community focused? Gives you another opportunity to address that it's resident driven, that it connects residents, and again, that you have a chance to really achieve this goal that you think will be impactful for the community. And we understand this, right? We're talking about $10,000. It's not, we don't overstating what the impact you can have with $10,000, right? It's not like you're gonna address, fully address whatever the issue is, school performance, for example, if that's your issue, or something large. But how is it going to take a step towards? We've had projects, for example, in communities where they want to do lighting, to convene neighbors. They have more kind of outdoor space they can use to come together. It's impactful because it beautifies, it brings people together more often. It's also supports safety. So, those kind of impacts are kind of what we're looking for. And then here's where we're talking about the benefits, as I just said. And then how many, and then here are some of the numbers, and this kind of gets to one of the previous questions. So how many community members do you expect to engage in the project planning? How many do you expect to engage in implementation? And then how many will ultimately benefit from the project? So those are three just numbers. These are number fields that we're looking for. And I will also say those numbers it depends upon the level of impact, right? I think just because you do something that's going to impact 1,000 community members, it doesn't mean that's better than something that's going to impact 50 or 40. It depends upon, we will look at kind of in what way are you impacting them, or, what does your project look like? So don't feel like you have to exaggerate or kind of look for ways. Of course, whatever you think makes sense, what's your kind of real vision for your project. Here's where you upload the video submission. And we get this question. It does have to be a YouTube video because that's kind of what we're bound to with this opportunity. So we'll provide some guidance on that. Again, we want basically take a 90-second video. We can provide instructions on how to upload that and create a private YouTube video. It doesn't have to be, just because you're making a YouTube video doesn't mean the whole world has access to it. And then you can upload the link, and it's just kind of the platform that we're able to then pull those down. And then lastly, this is just a simple question of how you heard about this grant opportunity as we continue to understand how the word's getting out and what else we can do to spread the word. I didn't fill anything in, so as I go back, you will see, I'll put some numbers in here just to show that I'm just making numbers up. So those are the only things I filled out. So when I save and return, well, before I do that, let me see, were there any questions that popped up specific to the narrative section of Lean that you saw?
No, I think I've addressed all those.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to turn it back over to Lean. I'm going to save and return back to this section, and just those 3 answers got me. Again, there aren't that many questions, so it was about a third of the required fields. So just to remind you of this, your little thermostat or whatever this is. Okay, Lean.
Thank you.
Yep.
So now we're going to go to the project budget. We're going to spend another, I would say, 5 to 10 minutes, and then we'll be wrapping up shortly. So I wanted to point out here that the project budget should match your project description. So let's say, for instance, you're trying to create a community garden, and you're trying to build raised beds and flowers and all this other stuff. So your budget should match what your project is. So we should see budget line items for perhaps soil or for flowers. This would not be a place where you would want to pack your budget into salaries, right? This is a project-oriented grant. So I just want to make sure that you realize that, and when our reviewers look at your budget and the application, they're going to want to see that the project and the budget match. So I think that pretty much covers that. And if you enter an amount in a conditional question, you'll be prompted to provide a description like what you've seen for the fiscal agent and also for other questions. That's the same thing here in this section. And so we go down to question 42. And I know we're skipping a whole lot, but you're going to see here that these are pretty simple, easy to figure out. You're just filling in what you need to. But if you go down to, does the total funding request submitted to United Way cover the cost to implement the project? And if that's a yes or no question, so that's another one of those conditional questions. If you answer no, you will be prompted to answer a couple of other questions. And if the total project cost exceeds your United Way funding request, how much total funding does your project cost to implement? So we would need to know that. That's a required question. And then we would like an explanation as to how you would receive those funds before the end of the project. So we just want to make sure your project is successful. We don't want to give you funding. Let's say you need 20,000 and we can only give you 10. If the project truly requires $20,000, then you would really want to make sure that you have a plan to get the other 10. I hope that makes a little bit of sense. So Rob, can we just scroll back up? I just want to see if there's anything here that you wanted to point out. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but what do you think?
I would just point out that for any of these things, you put a line on a budget in, then it's going to open a field, and we're asking for a little bit of a description. So, so let's say, you know, 4,000's already. So if you were to say 4,000 goes to staff salaries or staff support, then it asks, in the case of staff, it asks how many positions, and then for a brief description. So please just provide a little bit of information if it's, you know, 10% of somebody's time or 5% of somebody's time, or if you're using kind of stipends in the community. Again, if you put something in here for stipends, let's say 2,000, and your plan is to provide $100 to 20 people or $200 to 10 people, just, just let us know that that's the plan, and by, 10 people, $200 each. Times 10 people, just a little bit so we can, what you don't want to do in a grant application is leave people wondering how you got to a number or if it makes sense. So just, you don't have to go overboard, but just whatever information that makes it easier for them to be like, okay, I see where they got to that number and that makes sense. And I see in the program description, I understand where these people, the people who are stipended, it even gives you a chance to tell a little, you can even sneak a little bit more information about your proposal in here. If you want to then say, community recruited, community members recruited to provide support in this manner, and then paid at at $200 each for 10 of them, right? It even provides a little bit more depth. So don't, so see this as an opportunity to explain your project more and to be a little clearer, and not as much as like a chore, another box just to check off. And so any of these are the same. These are kind of our standard categories. You don't feel like you have to have money in each of those categories. And then we do have an administration must not exceed 10% of the total request. So if you're asking for a total of $7,000, then your administration should be $700 or less. So just straight up 10% of so it can be up to $1,000 if you're requesting the full amount, which is a $10,000 grant. Because we understand that there are some added supports, infrastructure supports that folks need to address. I don't have anything else other than that. Lillian, if there's any questions.
Yeah, let me just see. I think there was a question, and so we answered Eliza's question. Very good. I'm looking at Michelle Brown's question. I'm not completely sure if I will be eligible for this grant. Is there someone I can reach out to see if I will qualify before? Yes, Michelle, you can email me. My email address is in the chat. I need help with this is Tripuena. Let's see. Can you confirm what LOE is for me, please?
That means the level of effort for staff who will be running the project, because we have to give the total count. Like if we have a project manager overseeing this project is spending 10% of that time, how do we account for the 10% of over 30? That's the question I was asking. Because I think I had earlier on where you said, maybe I got it wrong, that we are not going to account for staff salary on this project. Is that right?
Oh, I hope I heard what you said. So my apologies if I didn't get it quite right. But you're basically wanting to know how do you account for staff time? So if the budget is under 10,000 for your project outside of this grant application, you can be able to account for the staff time in the salary section, and you could use this grant fund to cover some of the salary depending on the project. So like I said, if it's a project to build a grant or do something or build a community garden or something like that, you don't really want to use all of the salary for the grant because that's not the intent of the grant. But you can account for some of the staff time that would be allocated for this project. If the grant is, if the project is like I said, $20,000 or more, and you are, you definitely have more staff time than what is reflected in the budget for the project, I would say that it's good to clarify in that section that we pointed out just a little while ago, that you can explain that this is a $20,000 project. I'm seeking 10,000. The full staff salary for this project would be, I don't know, $5,000 or whatever the case is. But you have an opportunity in that field to explain exactly what your needs are and how this project will be fully implemented.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Let me ask if your question extends to reporting requirements. If you were, I thought maybe you were getting at how will you, what do you need to provide us in terms of backup for that? Was that part of your question?
Not really. I think I get it now. But the other question is, we have a project that has been funded halfway. It's not complete. Can we ask for funding from this grant to add on that so that the grant is implemented? Let's say the grant is 20,000. We can ask here for 10 and we got 10. Is that something that you want, or you want a brand new project?
It does not have to be brand new. If it just has to be aligned with the kind of the spirit of the neighborhood grant. Yes. So, right, if you already have some work in progress and you already have some funds committed and it's a project that really gets to what we're looking for and as outlined in the selection criteria, then absolutely you should. I guess what we're hoping people don't do is try to bring forth something that's not aligned just because there's a funding need, right? And you're doing something completely kind of unrelated or outside of what we're trying to accomplish with these neighborhood grants or the spirit of these. So that's something that it'd be hard to project that would get funded because they're really evaluating the proposal on the criteria that we've laid out. But absolutely, it doesn't have to be brand new. And if you already have other resources committed to it, that's great.
Okay, I think I answered that question about reporting. At this point in time, I don't want to give you an arbitrary reporting schedule because that has to be formalized. But once we get to the grant agreement stage, a part of one of the attachments that will be a part of that grant agreement will be a full description of what the reporting requirements are. And honestly, just to give you a sense of what we did last year, we would probably just ask you to do a report maybe midway, a check-in midway, and then also a final report at the end of the grant period. But that is still to be determined for this particular grant. So that is not set in stone, but that is just an idea of what we've done in the past. Okay, so Rob, if you're still with me, we just have to do one more thing. Can we go back to the dashboard?
Hi, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Okay, so Laline, I did get your email address, out of the chat, but I'm wondering if you will also be able to respond if we email you or give you a call. The category, the second category, and I don't have the categories in front of me right now, which is pretty broad in terms of the small neighborhood grants. If we have a question about whether or not we really fit into that category of, for example, I think here it is, inspire community connections. Would you be able to give us some direction with regard to our project?
Absolutely, yes. So let's start by email, and then depending on how things go, we can have a conversation. Absolutely.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. So again, this is the dashboard. Do you see that red section, final review and submit? I just want to stress once again before we close that it's pretty important that all of your documents be completed, all of your required fields are filled in, and then you're able to hit the submit button, and then that application will then be moved from under review, pending to submitted. And if you're missing anything at that point, again, there are so many different things that are going on right now. It would take some time to undo that. So please, for all of our submit when you're absolutely ready. Thank you so very much. I appreciate you all, your time today. Rob? Did you want me to press review and submit to see what happens? I'm not sure whether you. I don't think you can, because you're not at 100%. It's going to give me this message that says, hey, finish your work before you submit. Excellent. All right, so I think I'm done sharing. There was a recap slide that we're going back to, right, Laleen? Yes. So I guess I will unshare, and then it's back to you, Teresa, to pull up last remaining slide or two. Teresa, are you able to share your PowerPoint? I'll tell you what, I can. I'm pulling it up. Hold on. Okay, I have it right here. There we go. Thank you. Is that the slide? Is that the slide you needed? Is that the one you wanted, Rob? Well, this one's just a reminder of, I showed you where to find our information and that there's this upcoming grant writers workshop. So I guess just another plug for that, and then we're good. So yeah, this is where we are. Great. Okay. Yeah, so I think we covered this in great detail. I don't have anything to add here. Rob? No, I think we've got this all covered. Great. Any other final questions before we close? Well, if not, we thank you again for your time. We thank you for your interest. We hope to partner with you over the next 9 months of the grant period, and I'm happy to answer questions that you might have. So have a great afternoon.
All right, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.